I sat at the far end of the mahogany conference table in the Peterson Family Trust building, taking notes on my tablet while my sister Caroline held court like she'd been born to rule. In her mind she had been. She was the biological daughter of Marcus and Victoria Peterson, born into a family whose name appeared on hospital wings, university buildings, and the letterhead of one of New England's oldest family trusts. I was just Daniel, the adopted one. As I was saying before we were interrupted, Caroline continued, shooting a pointed look in my direction, the Peterson Family Trust has always been guided by blood legacy. Our great-grandfather built this empire, our grandfather expanded it, and our father preserved it. Now it's our responsibility to ensure it stays in the hands of real family members. She emphasized the word real while looking directly at me. Across the table, my younger biological sister Amanda nodded enthusiastically, flipping her designer hair over her shoulder. Caroline's absolutely right. This is about preserving our heritage. The Peterson name means something. Our mother sat near the head of the table, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. Our father had passed away 6 months ago, and these quarterly trust meetings had become Caroline's stage for asserting what she saw as her rightful dominance. The trust currently manages assets worth approximately $890 million, Caroline said, pulling up a presentation on the screen behind her. Real estate holdings, investment portfolios, the Peterson Foundation, and controlling interests in 7 companies. This isn't just money, it's a legacy that needs to be protected by people who actually share our father's blood. Caroline, our mother said weakly, your father specifically wanted all his children included in trust decisions. That includes Daniel. Dad was sentimental, Caroline said dismissively. He felt guilty about not being able to have more biological children after Amanda, so he adopted Daniel to make himself feel better. But sentiment doesn't make good business sense. Daniel doesn't understand our family history. He doesn't carry our DNA. He can't possibly have the same commitment to preserving what our ancestors built. I kept my expression neutral, continuing to review the documents in front of me. I'd learned long ago that engaging with Caroline's attacks only made them worse. Better to let her exhaust herself. I'm proposing a restructuring, Caroline announced. Amanda and I should have primary control over trust decisions. Mom can maintain her advisory role. And Daniel. She paused dramatically. Daniel should receive a fixed annual stipend, let's say $200,000, and be removed from operational decision-making. It's generous, considering he has no biological claim to Peterson assets. Amanda nodded eagerly. That's more than fair. Most adopted kids don't get anything when wealthy parents die. Daniel should be grateful for whatever he receives. He's been receiving equal treatment for 32 years, Caroline added. That's enough charity. It's time to acknowledge reality. Real family makes the real decisions. Our mother's face had gone pale. Girls, your father's will was very clear. All 3 of you are equal beneficiaries. He made sure Daniel had the same rights and responsibilities as his biological children. Dad's will was written when he was sick, Caroline said, her tone gentler now but no less determined. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was trying to be fair, but fairness isn't the same as wisdom. The Peterson legacy deserves to be controlled by Petersons. Real ones. I finally looked up from my tablet. Are you finished? Caroline smirked. Getting defensive, Daniel? I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just being practical. You're a nice person. You've been a perfectly adequate brother. But you're not a Peterson, not really. You know it, I know it, and it's time we stopped pretending otherwise. I asked if you were finished, I repeated calmly. Because we have other agenda items to cover, and you're taking up considerable time with your proposal. My proposal that will save this family's legacy, Caroline shot back. Unless you want to selfishly cling to assets you have no real claim to? Before I could respond, the conference room door opened. Harriet Morrison, the senior partner at Morrison & Associates, the law firm that had managed the Peterson Family Trust for 3 generations, entered with 2 associates carrying document boxes. Harriet was 73, silver-haired, and had the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. My apologies for the interruption, Harriet said, setting her briefcase on the table. But I was informed that there's discussion about restructuring the trust, and I felt it necessary to attend personally. Mrs. Morrison, Caroline said warmly, standing to shake her hand, How wonderful to see you. Yes, I've just proposed a sensible restructuring that recognizes bloodline rights in the Peterson Trust. I'm sure you'll agree it's the appropriate course of action. Harriet's expression didn't change. Miss Peterson, before we discuss any restructuring, I need to provide some information that's become relevant given the nature of this conversation. May I? Of course, Caroline said magnanimously, settling back into her chair. We value your counsel. Harriet opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I've been the Peterson family attorney for 41 years. I handled your father's adoption of Daniel 32 years ago. I drafted his will 6 months before his death. And I've been managing a separate trust that until now has remained confidential per explicit instructions. The room went very quiet. I kept my face carefully neutral, though I knew exactly what was coming. What separate trust? Caroline asked, her confidence wavering slightly. The Daniel Peterson Irrevocable Trust, Harriet said. Established 27 years ago by your grandfather Harrison Peterson, and later substantially modified by your father Marcus Peterson. The existence of this trust was known only to me, my senior partner who has since passed away, Daniel, and the trustees involved. Amanda leaned forward. Why would grandfather establish a separate trust for Daniel? That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense when you understand the full story, Harriet said. He turned to our mother. Victoria, I apologize. Your husband asked me to keep this confidential until a specific triggering event occurred. That event is currently happening, so the confidentiality provisions have lapsed. Mom looked confused and worried. Marcus never mentioned any separate trust to me. He wanted to protect Daniel, Harriet said simply. She opened the folder and pulled out documents. When Marcus and Victoria adopted Daniel 32 years ago, it wasn't a random act of charity, though that's what the family was told. Daniel's biological father was Harrison Peterson's illegitimate son. The silence that followed was absolute. Caroline's mouth had fallen open. Amanda looked like she'd been slapped. Mom's hand flew to her chest. That's impossible, Caroline whispered. Grandfather would never. Harrison Peterson had an affair in his late 40s. Harriet continued matter-of-factly. The woman was an employee at one of the Peterson companies. When she became pregnant, Harrison provided financial support but didn't acknowledge the child publicly. That child, Daniel's biological father Robert Chambers, grew up knowing who his father was but never claiming the Peterson name. She pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. It showed a young man who bore a striking resemblance to the portraits of Harrison Peterson that hung in the Peterson mansion. Robert died in a car accident when Daniel was 3 years old. His mother, Daniel's biological grandmother, reached out to Harrison. She didn't want money, she wanted Daniel to have a chance at the family life Robert never had. So grandfather bought a kid to ease his conscience? Amanda said. No, Harriet said sharply. Harrison Peterson spent 2 years getting to know Daniel before approaching Marcus and Victoria about adoption. He saw intelligence, character, and potential. He also saw his own blood, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Daniel is Harrison's biological grandson just as much as the 3 of you are his grandchildren. Caroline was shaking her head. This is insane. If this were true, why wouldn't grandfather just say so? Why the secrecy? Because Harrison's wife, your grandmother Eleanor, was still alive, Harriet explained. She was already in poor health, and Harrison didn't want the revelation of his affair to hurt her in her final years. So he arranged for Marcus and Victoria to adopt Daniel as if he were an unrelated child. The secret would remain between Harrison, Marcus, and myself. Mom was crying now. Marcus never told me. In 32 years of marriage, he never told me. He was honoring his father's wishes, Harriet said gently. But he wanted to make sure Daniel was protected. So when Harrison died 15 years ago, he left instructions for a separate trust to be established. Marcus honored those instructions and added his own provisions over the years. She turned to look directly at me. Daniel, your grandfather and father wanted you to have the tools to build your own success without the burden of family expectations or the complications of this secret. The Daniel Peterson Irrevocable Trust was funded with $47 million in initial capital from your grandfather's estate, plus an additional $28 million added by your father over the following years. Caroline made a strangled sound. Amanda had gone completely pale. That trust, Harriet continued, has been actively managed for 27 years. Daniel gained access to the funds at age 25, though he chose to continue growing the assets rather than drawing on them. As of this morning, the Daniel Peterson Irrevocable Trust is valued at approximately $394 million. The numbers hung in the air like a bomb. Caroline looked like she might be sick. Amanda was frantically calculating on her phone, probably trying to verify the math. "But there's more," Harriet said, and I saw the faintest hint of satisfaction in her eyes. 10 years ago, your father Marcus made a decision regarding the main Peterson family trust. He was concerned about the growing tension between his biological and adopted children. He worried that after his death, Daniel would be marginalized or excluded from family decisions based purely on adoption status. She pulled out another document. So Marcus restructured the trust using a sophisticated mechanism that tied voting control to demonstrated business acumen and ethical leadership rather than birth order or biological status. He established a series of milestones that would determine ultimate control of the Peterson family trust. "What kind of milestones?" Caroline demanded, her voice rising. "Business success, charitable contributions, educational achievement, and ethical conduct," Harriet listed. Each milestone earned points toward eventual controlling interest. The system was designed to reward merit, not entitlement. Your father believed that the person who best exemplified Peterson values should lead the trust, regardless of how they came to be Peterson. She laid out a spreadsheet on the table. Over the past 10 years, points have been awarded based on documented achievements. Caroline, you've run the Peterson Foundation admirably and earned significant points for that. Amanda, your work in the family's real estate division has been noted. But Daniel. Harriet turned to me with something like respect in her eyes. Daniel has been quietly building something extraordinary. Using his initial trust fund, he started an investment firm that has averaged 23% annual returns. He's endowed scholarships at 3 universities that have put over 200 students through school. He's purchased and renovated affordable housing units in 5 cities, providing quality homes for families that couldn't otherwise afford them. And he's done all of this without ever once mentioning the Peterson name or leveraging family connections. She pulled out another document. As of your father's death 6 months ago, the 10-year evaluation period ended. The points were tallied by an independent board of trustees. Daniel earned 847 points. Caroline, you earned 312. Amanda, you earned 89. "That's not possible," Caroline said, but her voice was weak now. "It's documented and verified," Harriet said. "Your father's restructured trust automatically transferred controlling interest to the highest-scoring beneficiary upon his death. There was a 6-month confidentiality period to allow for estate settlement. That period ended yesterday." She looked directly at Caroline. "Ma'am, your brother doesn't just have an equal share in the Peterson family trust. Daniel currently controls 67% of all trust holdings, voting rights, and decision-making authority. Caroline, you control 21%. Amanda, you control 12%. The silence was so complete I could hear the heating system in the walls. Caroline's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd gone. Amanda was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "That means," Harriet continued relentlessly, "that Daniel has final authority over all trust investments, distributions, foundation grants, and family business decisions. He can approve or reject any proposal. He can restructure trust allocations. And yes, he could, if he chose, reduce your roles to advisory positions with fixed annual stipends." She let that sink in for a moment before adding, "In other words, the exact proposal you just made for Daniel can now be made by Daniel for you." Caroline shot to her feet. "This is a setup. This is fraud. Dad he wouldn't have. Your father was crystal clear in his intentions," Harriet said firmly. "I have his signed documents, his video testimony recorded 6 months before his death, and a letter he wrote explaining his reasoning. Would you like me to read it aloud?" "Yes," Mom said quietly. "Please. I need to understand what Marcus was thinking." Harriet pulled out an envelope already opened and extracted several handwritten pages. "This is dated 4 months before his death. I'll read the relevant portions. To my family, particularly Caroline and Amanda. By the time you hear this letter, I'll be gone, and the truth about Daniel's heritage will have been revealed. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive, but I was honoring my father's wishes and protecting my mother from pain she didn't deserve in her final years. Daniel is your brother in every way that matters, but he's also your blood relative, your first cousin through biology, your brother through love and law. He carries Peterson DNA just as you do. But more importantly, he carries Peterson values in a way I always hoped all my children would. I watched Daniel grow up knowing he was adopted, knowing he was different, knowing that some family members would always see him as less than. And I watched him respond to that burden with grace, hard work, and integrity. He never demanded recognition. He never leveraged the family name. He never used his adoption story to claim victim status or excuse poor behavior. Instead, he built something real. He created value. He helped people. He stayed humble when he had every right to be proud, and he stayed kind when others were cruel. Caroline, Amanda, I love you both desperately. But I've also watched you grow up with the entitlement that often comes with inherited wealth. You expect respect because of your name. You expect success because of your lineage. You make decisions based on what benefits you rather than what serves others. The Peterson Family Trust is not a birthright. It's a responsibility. It requires wisdom, ethics, and genuine care for the impact our wealth has on the world. I've structured control of the trust to go to the person who best demonstrates those qualities. If Daniel is reading this as the majority controller of the trust, it means he earned it through merit, not through manipulation or politics. And if you're reading this feeling angry or cheated, ask yourselves honestly, did you earn control? Did you demonstrate the values this family should represent? Or did you simply expect it because of your biology? I hope you'll work with Daniel, learn from him, and become the leaders our family needs. But if you can't do that, if you continue to see him as lesser because of his adoption, then you've learned nothing from the example I tried to set. The trust is now his to guide. Trust him. He's earned it. With all my love, Dad. The letter ended, and for a long moment no one spoke. Mom was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Caroline was staring at the table, her hands clenched into fists. Amanda looked lost, like her entire worldview had just collapsed. I finally spoke, my voice calm and measured. I didn't know about the letter. Dad never told me what he'd written. But I knew about the milestone system. I knew what he was trying to do, create a way to ensure the trust went to whoever actually deserved it, regardless of biology. You should have told us, Caroline said, but the fire had gone out of her voice. Why? I asked genuinely. So you could game the system? So you could start doing charitable work not because you cared but because you wanted points? Dad designed it this way specifically so everyone would act according to their true character. And you did. We all did. I pulled out my own folder, one I'd brought knowing this moment would eventually come. For the record, I have no interest in removing either of you from the trust or reducing you to stipends. That was your proposal, not mine. But I am going to make some changes. Caroline looked up sharply. What kind of changes? First, the Peterson Foundation's annual budget is increasing from $12 million to $35 million. Caroline, you've done good work there, but you've been too conservative. We have the resources to make a bigger impact, and we should. I saw surprise flicker across Caroline's face. Second, I continued, Amanda, you're going to head a new division focused on affordable housing development. Not as a punishment, but because you actually have good instincts for real estate. I want you to take what you know and apply it to projects that matter, not just projects that maximize profit. Amanda blinked. You're giving me more responsibility? I'm giving you purpose, I corrected. You're good at what you do. You've just been doing it for the wrong reasons. This is your chance to build something meaningful. I turned to Caroline. You told me to leave business to real family members. You said I didn't belong in these decisions because I was adopted. You've spent 32 years making sure I knew I was different, lesser, not truly Peterson. Her face flushed with shame. But here's what you didn't understand, I said. Being Peterson isn't about DNA. It's not about whose blood runs through your veins. It's about what you do with the opportunities you're given. It's about whether you use wealth to build or to dominate. Whether you see family as people to love or competitors to defeat. I stood up, gathering my documents. Grandpa Harrison gave me a gift when he made sure I was adopted into this family. Not the money, the example. He showed me that mistakes can be corrected, that family can be chosen, And that legacy is something you build through your actions, not something you're owed because of your birth. Dad gave me an even greater gift, I continued, looking at my mother now. He gave me the tools to succeed and the space to figure out who I was without the burden of family expectations. He let me build my own foundation before revealing that I had a claim to his. Mom was nodding through her tears. He talked about you all the time. He was so proud of you, Daniel. He just wished he could tell you everything. He told me enough, I said. He told me through his actions what kind of man I should try to be. And that was worth more than any trust fund. I turned back to my sisters. So here's what's going to happen. I'm taking controlling interest of the Peterson Family Trust as Dad intended. But I'm not doing it to punish you or exclude you. I'm doing it because someone needs to refocus this family on what actually matters. Which is what? Amanda asked quietly. Using what we have to make things better, I said simply. Not for us, for people who actually need it. The affordable housing projects I've been running? We're scaling that across the trust. The scholarship programs? Expanding them. The investment firm? We're adding an ESG focus that prioritizes social impact alongside returns. I pulled out a proposal I'd been working on for months. I want to establish the Peterson Center for Adopted Youth. Fully funded. Providing support services, counseling, educational resources, and financial assistance for adopted children and adoptive families. As I was lucky, I was adopted into wealth and privilege. Most adopted kids aren't. They deserve support too. Harriet was reading the proposal with obvious approval. This is excellent, Daniel. Comprehensive, thoughtful, and exactly the kind of initiative your father hoped to see. The center will be run by an independent board, I continued. But I want both of you involved in advisory roles. Caroline, your foundation experience is valuable. Amanda, your operational skills are needed. I'm not pushing you out. I'm asking you to be part of something bigger than ego or entitlement. Caroline's voice was small when she finally spoke. Why? After everything I've said today, everything I've done over the years, why would you want me involved? Because you're my sister, I said simply. Not adopted, not biological, just my sister. And because Dad believed in second chances. He gave one to his father when he helped cover up the affair. He gave one to me when he adopted me despite the complicated circumstances. I'm giving one to you. I sat back down looking at both of them directly. But understand this, the dynamic has changed. You don't get to question my place in this family anymore. You don't get to use adopted as an insult or a disqualification. And you don't get to coast on the Peterson name while contributing minimal effort to the Peterson legacy. If you want to be part of what we're building, you need to actually build. You need to show up, work hard, and care about impact over image. If you can do that, you'll have a meaningful role in the trust and the family. If you can't, then yes, we'll need to discuss a different arrangement. Amanda nodded slowly. I can do that. I want to do that. I'm sorry, Daniel. For all of it. You've always been a better Peterson than I have. Caroline was slower to respond, pride and shame warring on her face. Finally she spoke. I've been horrible to you. For years. Not just today, for years. And you're still offering me a chance to be part of this. Family isn't about keeping score, I said. It's about growing together. I'm not going to pretend the past didn't happen. But I'm also not going to let it define our future if you're willing to change. She nodded, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. I'll change. I'll do better. I promise. Harriet cleared her throat. If we're all in agreement, I'll need signatures on the official transfer documents. Daniel will assume controlling interest, with Caroline and Amanda maintaining their minority positions and new operational roles as outlined. The restructuring will be recorded and filed with the Trust's Oversight Board. As everyone signed the documents, Mom came around the table to hug me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have done more to stop Caroline's behavior over the years. I should have stood up for you more strongly. You did your best in a complicated situation, I said. And you loved me. That mattered more than anything else. She pulled back to look at me. Marcus would be so proud of you. He always was, but now, seeing what you've built, who you've become, he would be so proud. I hope so, I said. I tried to honor what he taught me. As the meeting concluded and people began to gather their things, Caroline approached me hesitantly. Daniel, can we talk? Privately. I nodded and we moved to a corner of the conference room. She fidgeted with her papers, clearly uncomfortable. I don't know how to apologize for 32 years of being terrible to you. I'm sorry, seems incredibly inadequate. It's a start, I said. I think I was threatened by you, she said slowly, like she was discovering the truth as she spoke it. You were smart and kind and you worked hard without needing recognition. And I knew deep down that you were a better person than I was. So I attacked the one thing you couldn't change, your adoption. I made you feel less than so I could feel superior. That's disgusting. It's human, I said. Not admirable but human. The question is whether you want to be better. I do, she said firmly. I really do. And I want to learn from you if you're willing to teach me. How did you stay kind when we were all so cruel? How did you keep working when you could have just given up and lived off your trust fund? Because Grandpa Harrison and Dad taught me something important, I said. They taught me that the circumstances of your birth don't define you, your choices do. I was born into tragedy, adopted into privilege and given every reason to either feel entitled or bitter. But they showed me a different path. They showed me that you honor family legacy by building on it, not by claiming it. I looked at her seriously. You have a choice now, Caroline. You can spend the rest of your life resenting that I ended up with control of the trust. Or you can use this as a turning point to become the leader Dad hoped you'd be. But that's your choice, not mine. She nodded slowly. I choose better. Starting now. As we rejoined the others, Harriet pulled me aside. Your father would be remarkably proud, Daniel. Not just of your business acumen or your control of the trust, but of your character in this moment. You had every right to be vindictive. Instead you were just. I had good teachers, I said. You did, she agreed. And now you'll be a teacher yourself. Your sisters are going to learn what real leadership looks like whether they want to or not. Over the next several weeks the changes took effect. The Peterson Center for Adopted Youth was established with an initial endowment of $75 million. The Affordable Housing Division launched with Amanda at the helm, and despite my initial concerns, she threw herself into the work with genuine enthusiasm. Caroline expanded the Peterson Foundation's reach, and I noticed her spending more time actually talking to the people the foundation served rather than just writing checks. The trust's investments were restructured to prioritize social impact alongside financial returns. We sold off several holdings in companies that didn't align with our values and reinvested in sustainable businesses, minority-owned firms and innovative social enterprises. And slowly, painfully, my relationship with my sisters began to change. Caroline stopped making cutting remarks about my adoption. Amanda started asking my advice instead of dismissing it. We weren't close, not yet, but we were working towards something that resembled actual family. 6 months after that pivotal meeting, we held another quarterly trust review. The atmosphere was completely different. Caroline presented the foundation's expanded impact with genuine pride. Amanda showed affordable housing projects that would provide homes for 300 families. And I presented the trust's overall performance, 21% returns while maintaining ethical investment standards. At the end of the meeting, Caroline stood up. I have something to say. I've spent the last 6 months thinking about what happened, about what I said and what I learned. And I want everyone in this room to know something. She looked directly at me. Daniel Peterson is the best thing that ever happened to this family. Not because of his money or his business skills, though those are considerable. But because he showed us what Peterson values actually look like when they're lived rather than just claimed. He's more Peterson than any of us who were born with the name. And I'm grateful, truly grateful, that Grandpa Harrison made sure he became our brother. Amanda nodded. I second that. All of it. Mom was crying again, but this time they were happy tears. Your father knew, she said softly. He knew exactly what he was doing when he adopted you, Daniel. And he knew exactly what he was doing when he structured the trust the way he did. He was teaching all of us what really matters. As we left the meeting that day, walking out into the Boston sunshine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like I truly belonged. Not because of blood or money or control, but because I'd finally earned the respect of the people I'd always considered family, even when they didn't consider me the same way. The Peterson Family Trust would continue for generations, funding scholarships and housing projects and charitable works. But more importantly, it would stand as a reminder that family isn't about biology, it's about choice. The choice to love, to support, to grow together. And sometimes the adopted son turns out to be exactly what the family needed all along. That's what real legacy looks like.